Hey, good morning, guys. Beautiful day out here today. So we're going to try and get our walls up on our utility shed that we're building. This utility shed that's outside right now is going to be a gambrel style roof. So if you think of a barn, typical barn has that gambrel style roof where you'll have a slant on the sides and you have more of a flatter type to the roof. So we covered that earlier. So that should be one of the indicators of what we're doing, because these walls, you can see this wall right here is a relatively short wall. It's only 4 feet to actually it's like 45 inches from top to bottom. That way when I put the sheathing on there, I'm going to use like a vertical T111 is what the siding that is called. It's got like the grooves already in it, every 8 inches on center. So when I stand this thing up and I put the sheathing on it, I can take a full sheet of sheathing and I can cut it down into 4x4 chunks. The sheathing will come to the top of my top plate and it will hang over the side of my building and cover up the edge of my floor plywood. And that's kind of important. You don't want that exposed edge of that plywood to be exposed, I guess, to the weather. So that's what we're going to do today. So what I have set up right now is I've got my wall system out here, and you can kind of see that I have what's called a California corner. So I just took another 2x4 and I laid it flat in this direction. And what that's going to help with is that if I have any corner trim that I'm going to put on this wall, that the corner trim will probably extend out to about here. If I go with a 1x4 corner trim, then I still got something to nail my sheathing to. So if I didn't have this corner and all I had was a stud here, it would be difficult to nail my corner trim on and have something to nail my sheathing into or my plywood into. So that's the reason why I went with that type of a corner. So when you get walls ready to lay out, you can see that I've got my crowns facing up. So I'm going to stand that wall up in this direction. First thing you want to do is you want to have a chalk line down on your floor system. Now we're only dealing with a 10-foot floor, so it's not going to be real difficult to get our floor or our wall system nice and straight. But you want to run the chalk line on a longer wall because these top and bottom plates could be a little bit crowned, and if they are, and you don't pull that crown out when you nail it on your floor system, your wall sheathing or your drywall on the inside is going to bow in or out, depends upon which way you have things running. So you want to make sure that you snap a chalk line, and you're going to put that chalk line, the edge of your sole plate's going to run right on that chalk line. Now, how wide do you go on this? You go from the edge of your plywood, you're going to go the same width as your sole plate. So I got a 2x4 sole plate, so I'm going to come in 3.5 inches when I snap my chalk line. So I have a chalk line here. It's really sunny out today, so it's tough to see if I've got the camera where it's supposed to be on these cheap Stanley chalk lines. So I have a nail down there to hold it. You've got a partner, you can have him or her hold it for you, but I don't have a partner today, so I've got it a nail at 3.5 inches over there. I've got it marked down here at 3.5 inches, and I'm just going to lift up a little bit and snap. The one thing I see students make a big mistake with chalk lines is that they will pull that chalk line way up in the air and snap it down. If you do that, you could actually, if you're not pulling it straight up and down, you could be pulling at an angle and actually snap that chalk line in the wrong direction. So you want to make sure that you just pull up a little bit when you go to snap that chalk line. All right, so I'm going to pause my video, get a couple things ready to go, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've got my wall system just about where I want it to go. I'm going to stand it up, and then I'm going to nail it into place. And I'm going to use, of course, because I'm going into treated plywood, I have to use my hot dip galvanized. And I want to use a 16 penny nail because I have to go through the sole plate, which is 2x4. I also got to go through the plywood, which is 3/4 inch thick, and I want it to stick down into my floor joist. So I want to make sure I use a long enough nail for that case. And again, because I'm going in to treat it, I have to use a hot dip. So let me adjust my camera a little bit so you can see what I'm doing here. So I just stand my wall up. If it's a big wall, you're going to need several people to help you with that. And you just kind of bump it over to where you need it. I could use my hammer if I wanted to. I'll just use my foot in this case. So I've got the wall pretty close to where I want it. With a wall system, you want to start at one end and work your way across. And it really doesn't matter which end that you start with, but you want to start at one end and work your way across. You don't want to start at both ends, or you don't want to start in the middle, because as you go, you've got to pull the bow. Get down here where you can see me. You have to pull the bow out of this wall if there is in fact a bow. I've got it right on my chalk line, and I'm going to put my first nail in. And I got to make sure that I get that nail into that floor joist. If I come too far on the inside of my sole plate, I might miss that floor joist, and then that nail is just being held in place by the plywood below it. So you want to make sure that you get that nail all the way into that floor joist. So make sure that you're staying to the outside 1.5 inches of that sole plate. So then as I work my way down, I just bump my wall out, make sure it gets on my chalk line. Oops, that was going to happen. That's a good save, Mr. Clare. And I work my way down the wall system. I want to put at least 2 nails in every pocket so that I've got good holding power. So I'm just going to work my way on down. Again, bumping my wall as I go. If I need to kick it out a little bit to get on my chalk line, I got to do that. If I need to kick it in, I can do that. But if I were nailing from both sides, if I had a partner and he or she was on the other side nailing from the other way, when we get into the middle, and if we're not on our chalk line, it's going to be really tough to get back on our chalk line. So that's why you start at one end, work your way across. So we'll pause the video again. We'll finish nailing this down. We'll get into the next step. All right, so I got my wall systems secured down to my floor system, and I'm ready to go. But what I want to do now is I want to do some bracing on this thing. And there's a couple ways I want to brace it. One, I want to brace it to keep it square. So you recall we had that entire unit on leveling out a floor system with the sight with the laser. We did that with this floor system outside, and then I double checked it this morning before I got going, just to make sure that my floor system hadn't sunk into one corner or the other in the soft dirt out here. And the floor system's still pretty level. So if the floor system's level, all I should have to do then is get my studs vertically, or get them straight up and down, get them plumb, I guess is the technical term. So we're going to do that, and we're going to put a cross brace on this wall system to keep it plumb. So I don't want to sit there while I'm putting sheathing on and have to wrestle with that sheathing by myself, and also try to get the floor or the wall system plumb again. So what I want to do is I want to use a brace. And I'm going to brace it on the inside because I'm putting my sheathing on the outside. So if I put my brace on the outside, then I would have to take that brace back off when I get to that point on my sheathing. So it's actually going to be out of my way, and that's why I put this brace on the inside. I'm going to use these duplex nails. It's a double-headed nail. It will allow me to drive into this first head, and that head will hold into the wall system very securely, and it shouldn't come out until I get ready. And then when I want to, I can just grab on my hammer, my claw hammer on the second head on the outside, pull that nail out real easily. So these duplex nails are great for temporary bracing. So the most important thing with bracing a wall is I want to make sure that I've got my first nail into the sole plate of my board. If I just nail my studs, those studs are going to want to rack. In other words, they're going to want to move unless I've got them into something secure. So my first duplex nail is going to go into my sole plate, and it's going to angle up and cover it a couple studs. So we'll get the first nail in, then we'll take a quick pause on the video, and we'll show you how to rack this thing. So let me pause the video here. We'll reset and get right back to you. All right, so I've got my first nail, my first duplex nail into my sole plate. You can see that I've got it, and I might have to move my camera just a little bit. There we go. All right, so you can see I've got my first nail down into my sole plate, and this brace board is pivoting on that nail. So the next thing I want to do is I've got a nail already started into this board, but I got to find out if I'm plumb here. So I'll put my level on there, and if I need to, I'll pull this wall one way or the other to get it nice and plumb. So there I'm plumb. So I'm just going to drive that nail home. Now I want to hit the other two studs with nails as I go across here. So we'll do that real quick. So now this wall is braced laterally, and this thing is not moving. It is not going to rack back and forth this way. If you recall, when we did our house, if you were part of that project, we put the sheathing on the outside of the building before we stood the walls up. And that was a big advantage because then we wouldn't have to have this brace. I don't have my sheathing on hand right now, so I thought, let's get the walls up, let's get this thing racked so that it's nice and plumb, and then I'll put the sheathing on later. But when I get all to the point that I've got this thing all sheathed, then I can just take my claw hammer and I can pull those duplex nails out, and it works really good. So the next thing I have to do is I need to brace my walls going into the building or out of the building. Now, if you're on a big platform like we were with the house project, it would be really difficult to run a brace from the outside of that wall down to the ground. And even with this small shed, it would be kind of tough to do that. Plus, it would just make a much bigger footprint for a very small shed. And besides, when I go to put sheathing on the outside of that, then I've got these braces I'm going to trip over. So I'm going to brace it from the inside down to my floor system. I'm going to get it nice and plumb again, just like that. Only instead of working plumb this way or racking it, I'm going to work it in toward the building. So I'm going to get a couple braces set up real quick. We'll come back. We'll show you how that works, and then we'll finish up today. And I lost my... there we are. All right, so the wind's picking up a little bit. I still hope you guys can hear me, but I've got my brace set up to get my wall plumb this direction. So I've got it racked, which means it's square going this direction. Now I want to make sure that I'm plumb going this direction. Again, this only works if your floor system is nice and level, which, like I said, we've checked. So you can see that I've got a block nailed down to my floor. I could screw it down to my floor, but I nailed it down with some duplex nails. It's going to leave a couple holes, but I tried to line it up on the seam of my plywood. Now, if you're in a house situation, keep in mind, this is just a subfloor. You're going to put like another floor over the top of this. You're probably going to put like some real thin plywood to kind of get it nice and even, and take out all the divots from the plywood. And then you're going to also put like covering on the top, whether it's a hardwood floor, carpeting, or whatever. So all that stuff will go on next. But I've got my block nailed down. I've got my brace nailed to my block that's in the floor. Now all I have to do is grab my level, get this thing nice and plumb, and then nail it in place. And I do have a nail started in my board already. So the big thing here is you want to make sure that the edge of the corner of this brace is not going to protrude outside of the wall, because when I go to put the sheathing on, I'm going to run into that. So I don't want that. So I want to make sure that I get that nail in, or get the corner of that brace inside of where my sheathing is going to go. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to put my level on here. I'm going to rack it one way or the other. It's going to have to come in just a little bit. And right about there is level. So I want to hold that in place. And now that wall is really secure going this way. So it's not going to come in. Now, I'd probably want to put one of these braces, I don't know, about every 12 feet or so. It depends upon really how curved your top and your bottom plate are, but just one brace